Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review post-match reaction video following Rangers' 2-0 defeat to Aberdeen at Pittodrie this afternoon. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined by Jonny McFarlane. If you want to get your point across, folks, don't be shy. Stick it in the comments and we'll get to as many as possible in what has been a very sobering Sunday evening for Rangers, falling to defeat after a dominating for large spells, especially in the first half. They passed up a number of glorious opportunities, namely Fashion Sakala. Alfredo Morelos had a chance. It was cleared off the line. Borna Barisic hit the side post in the netting. They also had opportunities in the second half. James Tavernier forcing a point-blank save out of Kel Roos. Rabbi Matondo should have done better with an opportunity as well. The Aberdeen goals coming from a freak goal, if you like, following a poor pass from Tavernier aimed at Morelos, who himself never really covered himself in glory. Slipped and that allowed Scales, the on-loan Celtic man, to launch a ball from about 40 yards, a cross-come shot that surprised Alan McGregor. It sailed over his head and into the back of the net. Goal number 2 was a shocker. Borna Barisic caught on his heels, a cross ball into the penalty area towards the back post, and there was Miovski to nod past the stranded Alan McGregor, and that's how it finished, folks. Rangers were poor in that second half. We've done a Twitter Spaces. Any of you who joined us at half-time, folks, I think we were pretty comfortable and relaxed that Rangers would eventually find the breakthrough after dominating the first half. Alan McGregor only called into action once to deny Miovski his near post after a poor pass from Ben Davis set up an opportunity for Aberdeen. But that aside, Rangers had been dominating. But unfortunately, they fell to defeat. A disappointing afternoon, which doesn't bode well heading into next week, Jonny.
It certainly doesn't. And you'd have to say that Michael Beale's assessment that the game is going to be 50-50, Derek, is looking somewhat optimistic based on that performance. Right now, the way I feel, having watched this team for the last few games, I would say that Connor Goldson, James Tavernier, Malik Tillman, Todd Cantwell and Nico Raskin are probably the only ones you'd be happy to remain in the squad. And even Tillman, I think you're starting to ask some questions, but I think he's a young man with a hell of a lot of potential. Those are the 5 names I think you're going to have to build a new Rangers around. But what you absolutely need to do is ensure that you get a set of forward players who score goals. Because I feel like I've been talking about this, Derek, for months, for years. Rangers don't score enough goals. They're just not ruthless enough. And they let too many goals into the back. So that's a terrible, terrible situation if you're a football team trying to go for trophies. I just had a quick dig at the stats. Someone asked me the pertinent question on Twitter. How many goals do Rangers let in based on shots on target? Rangers have had 80 shots on target between Alan McGregor and John McLaughlin this season, and 31 have gone in. That means if you hit a shot on target against Rangers, 38% of the time, it flies into the net. That is totally unsustainable for any team that's going for titles. I don't think today was down to the keeper. I'm not saying that. But if you look at that over the course of a season, which that figure is, that is just absolutely bonkers. As for at the other end, how many times have we said it? Alfredo Morelos, look, he wasn't at fault today, I don't think, but 18 goals is his top tally. It's nowhere near enough. Ryan Kent doesn't score goals. You need a right-sided player who's going to bash in loads of goals. Sakala's done okay, but I think we saw again today, he's an erratic player. He's up and down, he's frustrating. I'd be quite happy with Fashion Sakala as a second choice sub, but as a guy you go to week in, week out, I just find them too frustrating. You never know what you're going to get, and that means that you're going to see up and down performances. So I'm not having that. This team, make no mistake, this is not a refresh that's required. It's a rebuild. And many of us who are Rangers watchers who have been watching the club closely over the last 6 months have been saying for a long time, this is a rebuild. There's huge amounts of work that needs to be done. I think Rangers need to go out there and try and move on quite a lot of these players. I think players like John Lundstrom, like Glenn Kamara, like Yanis Hadji, like Ben Davies, that many people would have perhaps thought would be around next year. I think you need to look at all those. I'm not saying all of them need to go, but I think you need to look at them to get the money in, to free up some wages. And I think you need to give this squad a massive refresh. One last thing. I started this by talking about Cantwell and Raskin as being guys you would look to build the team around going forward. They're showing a worrying propensity to kind of disappear a little bit in these kind of games, Derek.
Yes.
And it's understandable that it's going to take a bit of time to get used to the kind of blood and thunder element of Scottish football. And Rangers against Aberdeen at Pittodrie is always going to have a bit of that. But they need to get a hold of these type of games fairly sharpish. And the next one is the most important of all. These are two really talented lads. There's absolutely 100% no doubt about that. But you can't just disappear into your shell when you're a Rangers player. If you want to make it work, you have to stand tall and start to help dominate games. And I'm starting to see a slightly worrying situation whereby they're not in the big games. And all the positivity that's surrounding them that's helping, I think people look to next season and think about it in a more positive light, will disappear if they don't start making an impact, starting with the end of this month, next weekend. That's a huge one. And listen, I don't know about anybody in the comments. Is there anyone there that's feeling this is a 50-50 game anymore?
No, but listen,
I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, loads of comments coming. I'm going to get to a few of them. Stephen Dixon says, guys, there's a problem in this team. Defenders can't defend, forwards can't score, no togetherness. Is there a split in the dressing room? He says. My point with regards to that, and it stems from, I mean, Michael Beale has said publicly that the squad will be much changed next season, Johnny, and he has already said that discussions have taken place with certain squad members about their futures. And I mean, it's not been made public yet, but he has said that he's way down the line with regards to that. He has said in press conferences before. I just feel that many of these players have mentally checked out. I mean, we're at a stage of the season now where every game is pretty much, well, in terms of the league, a dead rubber, if you like. There's nothing really to play for. It looked very much like that today. We've got the huge game next week. Rangers playing anywhere near like they did today, they'll get punished severely. And I know there will be a bit of anxiety amongst supporters heading into that game after what they witnessed today. But for me, I think everyone, even the manager, can't wait to get to the end of the season. I think that's perhaps filtering onto the players as well. And that's why we're getting served up performances like we did today.
Well, yeah, I think the manager's smart enough to understand that this isn't his team. This isn't what he wants it to look like. But he's going to be tarred with the brush of having presided over potentially very damaging defeats, especially to Celtic. Now, Michael Beale, I don't think there's any doubt he's done a good job since he's come in. This, make no mistake, this gap that's present in the league would have been significantly larger had Gio remained in charge based on what we're seeing, because I think a lot of the fixtures that Michael Beale powered through, that Van Bronckhorst team wouldn't have. So he has done a good job largely. But he's going to have to try and get a turn out of these players. And it's very, very difficult because after every poor performance or defeat by Celtic, everyone wants him to come out and say, well, everything's getting ripped up, we're starting again. But he needs to go back to the well, to the likes of Kent, to the likes of Morelos, to the likes of Ben Davies, who perhaps think that their future might be elsewhere come the end of the season. It's pretty difficult to do, Derek. He's spinning a lot of plates, trying to balance things. And you have to say at the moment, it's looking like he's going to be foiled, because I think Rangers are in deep, deep trouble in this semi-final based on the way Celtic attack these games. Now, I think the point about checked out seasons is correct, because I think you can even see that yesterday in their game against Motherwell, drawing 1-1, and that's a game I think they would have won had they had to win. Clearly, they know they've got a big gap there.
Yeah.
And you can see today, Rangers, I thought personally played very well in the first half. I thought we're playing okay in the second until it was a freak goal, make no mistake. But then I thought Aberdeen came in and started to impose themselves, and I thought they played very well. Clearly, Barry Robson, based on his phenomenal results, is a talented manager. gets them organised, gets them aggressive. It was much more like a Derek McInnes at Aberdeen than the incarnation we've been seeing in recent years under Stephen Glass first. And then under Jim Goodwin, who tried to obviously make them more expansive. Barry Robson seems to have got them back to playing a much harder sort of physical style of football, and certainly they were very direct, and that caused Rangers problems. Some big decisions are going to have to be made. I think Michael Beale needs to maybe go back to the drawing board this week, Derek. Have a wee think about how you can spring a surprise on Celtic, how you can do something different, maybe with personnel. Could there be a couple of surprise starters? Could Rabbi Matondo offer you something different? I don't know. I don't really think so, but I'm just throwing it out there. Is there something you could do that could pull a rabbit out of a hat and kind of throw Ange Postecoglou a conundrum that he can't necessarily answer? I think it's a huge ask. One thing I would say, mate, at the moment, based on the performance of Ben Davies, and I said it in the spaces at the time, at half-time, I'd play John Souttar alongside Connor Goldson. I don't think Davies looks like he's at the races at the moment. He's had his confidence badly shaken, and he looks like a guy who needs a wee rest, a wee break from the team. A couple of times today, I thought he was in bad shape, and okay, it's not his fault for the first goal. Tavernier gives the ball away. In terms of the second goal, I think Tavernier gives the ball again away, doesn't he? Or he certainly plays it into Scala. I think there's some discussion about whether or not it was a foul.
Yeah.
I'd need to see it again. It didn't look like it to me when I first saw it. The ball comes into the box. It's a delicious cross and a fine finish, of course. A fine finish, but at the same time, you've got to say, born at that back post, defending is probably not the strongest part in his game. He loses the guy and he tucks it away. I think there's a lot of problems ahead, Derek. I don't think you can sugarcoat it.
Yeah, listen, and there's lots of talks about the manager as well. He has to get a summary, has to bring in his own players. He's doing what he can with this group, but for me, too many of them have checked out, and it needs like that rebuild, like you say, Johnny. And unfortunately, that it may even be more pain from here until the end of the season, I think, just as the way it is at this moment in time. Just on Matondo, Alistair says, Rabbi Matondo looked bright. That's the only positive. Should have scored with the opportunity on 75 minutes for me. That aside, yeah, he did look bright, but he was bought for a substantial amount of money. Rangers need to see more from this guy, but certainly from his cameo last week against St Mirren, I thought he did well enough when he
should have scored, Derek. He's got a great chance there, and he hits the ball well. But weirdly, it started to curl in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I don't know how he's managed it, but I mean, again, it's finishing, isn't it? I mean, it's erratic in front of goal. It's not good enough. Michael Beale did touch on that in both boxes, that they do squander too many opportunities. And I know there's a lot of criticism for Alfredo Morelos today as well. Comment here, why is Morelos even in the squad? Well, there's no one else at this moment in time. I know Zach Lovelace was on the bench, but who else are you playing up front? There's no Kamar Roof. There's no Antonio Cholak at this moment in time. You've only got young Zach on there. Who else you got?
I'll say one thing. Through the middle? I'll say one thing. Should Rangers lose the semi-final, every player that's not going to be part of the team going forward should be axed, right? Alfredo Morelos, Ryan Kent, they're not going to sign. Get rid of them. Tell them to go and enjoy their holidays. Go off for a break somewhere. Whatever you want to do, Beale should just work with the players that he has next season. And that may include bringing up players from the B team. Because there's absolutely no point in working in within that squad with players that are not going to be there. You'd as well having a much closer look at guys like Rabbi Matondo, like Lovelace, like Devine, for example, like Yilmaz, trying to ensure that you're fully aware of what they can do in a game day environment, rather than going through the motions with players who you know are going to go. I think Rangers have to get their ducks in a row. If that semi-final goes the wrong way, I think what you're going to see is fans that are very, very upset at the moment, being extremely, extremely upset, and will be wanting answers immediately as to what the plans are going forward. But for me, I'm not a big one for this kind of, let's allow them to sort of go out with 4 games worth of kind of friendly dignity. They're checked out because they're signing for another team. Don't want to get injured. There's absolutely no point in asking them to go to the well. You're as well putting in players that can actually see their future at Rangers. That's the only way I think they can approach it if this semi-final goes the wrong way.
Yeah, let's get to a few of the comments. Denzel says, Beale can only be judged after the summer. We can't just keep sacking managers. Totally agree with Denzel's point there. Stuart Ballantyne just raised a point on the manager. Beale needs a plan B. He only seems to play one way, and when it's not working, he sticks with it. And then just on the back of that, there was an interesting point just on Arfield. Robert Robertson says, Arfield stripped and ready to come on at 80 minutes, come on at 87 minutes. We did see him stripped quite early on, but he wasn't introduced for some time. I can't quite get my head around why that was the case. I think he certainly should have been introduced much sooner than he was. And just another point as well with regards to someone else who was on the bench, King Bonko says, just start Hadji if he's fit, just go for it. That's another one that will have supporters scratching their head, Johnny. Now we know he's been out long-term injured, but he's been back training with the squad. He's been in match day squads for some time now. He just hasn't had much of a look in, has he? Is he one that could be drafted in as a surprise starter next week?
Sorry, Derek, who was that? You just broke up for me.
Yanis Hadji. The comment there is just start Hadji if he's fit. Listen, he's one. I think he should be asking the manager why he's not getting a look in at this moment in time. He's been available for a number of weeks now, yet he's not been given the opportunities really.
Yeah, Yanis Hadji for me should have been more integrated into the team. This is one I think we need to ask Michael Beale about when we do sit down with him in the days ahead. What exactly has been the situation with Yanis Hadji? Because the club were extremely keen to get him back, get him fit, and he's been fit since the end of January, Derek. And we're now in April, and the end of April, and he's barely played.
Yeah.
Michael Beale talked about how much of a professional he was. He was a great lad, big part of the future, signed a new deal. And, he's not been in. Maybe he needs a pre-season. But you know what? Like, if Yanis Hadji wasn't going to be a big part of things, he should have been sent out on loan so he could come back next year.
Good point.
Fit and firing.
Yep.
The problem you have now is that's Yanis Hadji had a year and a half out of football, maybe longer than that. When exactly did he get his injury? It was like November, wasn't it? So it will be a year and a half out of his career.
It was January, the Scottish Cup tie when they came back. It was January time. It will be about 18 months.
It's a long time to be out, Derek. It's a long time to be out. And but I don't think you can throw him back into the Celtic game. That would be just a hit and hope job. He's a good player, but I think you'd be setting him up for failure with that, and I don't think it'd be very, very fair.
Yeah, as you know, folks, you can donate to the channel, which is greatly appreciated. The super chat, as I think it's known, Andrew has done just that. He says we need a Celtic 2021 style rebuild, and so that's what he thinks. I totally agree, Andrew. I think it needs a massive overhaul in the summer. Malik Tillman's come in for a bit of criticism, Johnny. Sort of ties in with what you said about players going missing when the going gets tough in these games. James McLean raises a point. The Tillman project has to come to an end in the summer. We can't be spending $5 million on a player who only turns up against lower standard teams at Ibrox. Does James have a point there? I think next week there's going to be an interesting selection dilemma for Michael Beale because Malik Tillman hasn't really showed up against Celtic as yet this season. I think there's no doubt about it. He has an abundance of talent. Remember, this is his first full season as a professional. Very much learning on the job, and he's still raw, but I think there's enough there for Rangers to invest in him. I think that's what Michael Beale is looking to do, and I'm sure they'll recoup the price they're going to pay Bayern Munich for him, and then some should they wish to sell him on. However, is there a debate to be had as to whether Rangers should start him next week?
Yeah, well, I would definitely buy Malik Tillman for £5 million. I think if you're talking about a guy that's going to rack up numbers in the Scottish Premiership, which Rangers need, I think looking at him age 20, what he's produced this season is pretty good, and he will only get better. And I would imagine his improvement will accelerate pretty nicely. You look at his technical qualities, you look at his physical qualities. There's a guy that's got everything that he needs to become a really, really top Rangers player. Of course, he's not there right now. Of course, he's not. As you say, Derek, it's his first season in professional football. But I think, what's he got, 10 goals already? I think he's got a number of assists.
Yeah.
He's such a lovely player to watch.
It's a big game, though, Johnny. It's a big games he's being judged on, isn't he? And people are wanting to do it against teams like Aberdeen, against teams like Celtic, aren't they?
Yeah, no, I get that. But if you're talking about just sheer quality, I think Malik Tillman's at a level that you wouldn't normally be able to bring to Scotland.
Yeah.
I was speaking to somebody quite knowledgeable about the situation at the club when he first arrived. And they said to look, this guy Malik Tillman is a player at a level that we normally couldn't get in, a youngster of the quality that we normally couldn't get in. Gio's delighted. We feel like we've won a watch and getting him into the club. But be aware that it'll be expensive to sign him, and Bayern Munich are no mugs, so it won't be you sign him for 5 million and get him in the door, and if he does brilliantly, you can sell him for 25 million down the line.
Yeah,
it'll be very much if he comes in and does well at 5 million, performs in the Champions League, starts setting the header alight, you'll be going back to Munich, I would imagine, for 8 or 9 million, maybe 10. So this Malik Tillman is not a deal to be making a mint from. Malik Tillman would be a deal to bring in a player that's better than the level that you could normally get to Rangers.
Yeah.
The question is I think then, could you go and buy 5 players for £5 million? That would give you the option of turning those into £5 million players, if you understand my meaning, Derek. Could that money be made to work harder? And I think that'll be the big question Michael Beale will now be asking himself. He'll be looking at the overall budget. But I think it'll depend on how many players he can sell, how many players he can get out the door for cash. There's a lot of balancing up to be done looking at this Rangers squad.
Yeah, interesting comments and quite contrasting comments coming in. John Moffat says Tillman's never worth 5 million, 3 million at a push.
Can I come back on that, Derek?
Yes.
He's absolutely worth 5 million, and John's completely wrong. £5 million now in the English Premier League.
That gets you Yilmaz, Johnny, and we've not seen him really at all.
Yeah, it's. I know where he's coming from. He's coming from a position of what 5 million. I mean, 5 million used to get you Arthur Newman. But we've got to be realistic. Like Danny Ings is going for like £35 million, isn't he? So
yeah.
You need to understand that in the context of the elite clubs, and Tillman is coming from an elite club, it's effectively a £250,000 signing. It's in terms of old money. Yeah, I don't think you're getting a lot of value for your money with 5 million. Put it this way, I don't think 5 million brings you in a huge difference from a £1 million player. Now, I don't think there's necessarily that huge quality divergence that you would have got. I think it's depends on your luck, depends on how that person fits in. And listen, time will tell if Malik Tillman is going to end up at Rangers. I'm starting to have my doubts, to be honest.
Yeah, listen, there's an interesting comment that came in on Tillman. Someone suggested he should play as the number 9. That was suggested, I think, prior to the game at Parkhead as a sort of false 9. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think if you're getting so little output from the likes of Morelos and Sakala up front for me today was atrocious. Really, really poor game from him. Erratic, raw, rash, caught offside a million times. Not good enough really for me. Rangers need much better, and you'd hope that they'll address that situation come the summer. I know Michael Beale said in his BBC interview after the game that it's something that they have been wasteful in front of goal, and as the numbers you just mentioned earlier on, Johnny, it's clear that they need to improve in the final third. Denzel says McCrory next weekend. What is there to lose? Can't go on the way we are. He won't get. He's not fit enough, I don't think, for a start. Robbie McCrory. He will get games after next Sunday. Of that, there is no doubt. He is one, Johnny. I would have no qualms about if he is fit, playing him in the 5 games remaining after the semi-final.
100% agree with you. But as much as I've questioned Alan McGregor this season, I think if there was one game that I was going to trust Alan McGregor, age 41, to perform in, it's going to be against Celtic, because he does lift himself for these games. And listen, for all we've talked about the stats around Rangers' goalkeeping situation, I don't think he's shamed himself. It's remarkable that he's producing at the level he is at 41, to be honest. But that level's clearly no longer, I don't think, good enough for Rangers. I'd still play him against Celtic because of the options you have. John McLaughlin, I think, has proven that he's not up to it. McGregor, I think, is still a better option there. And I think Robbie McCrory, you'd be throwing him in after how many months out injured? What, three months? It's just too early.
But that is technical.
But after that, absolutely agree with you, Derek. Get him in if Rangers lose.
Yeah. Let's get to a few more comments before we wrap up. James Skeen says, why was Raskin playing if he was carrying an injury? Michael Beale did touch on he had a fitness test that he passed earlier on. That's why he was brought off midway through the second half for Rabbi Matondo. I thought it was an interesting substitution bringing him off, but he did explain afterwards. So hopefully he is one that will just wrap in cotton wool ahead of next Sunday. I thought he had a pretty quiet game, Nico, today. Had a chance in the first half that the Beale says he should have squared to Malik for an easier finish. But Rangers need him fit and firing next week. Of that, there is no doubt. He also said that Kent and Goldson should be back next week. And that ties in with a comment from SB. We touched on Morelos, but should Kent start next week? I think Kent will start next week if he's fit, Johnny. But he's one that I've said on record, one of a number of players, like you just said, if their future is not going to be at Rangers, then say tata, see you later, head off on holiday early. I don't think there's any point in having him around if he's not going to be here next season.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Kent's been a great servant, just like Alfredo Morelos has, but I just think based on what we've seen in the last 2 years from this squad, Beale needs to make some strong decisions. I think he needs to be seen to be ruthless. This is as much PR as anything else, Derek. And that sells the vision of his Rangers going forward. Graham Souness was absolutely ruthless as Rangers manager. Players were just cut adrift. Terry Butcher, the England captain, was cut adrift on the back of a few bad games. He was, to be fair, Souness got it right. He was on the turn like bad milk, Terry Butcher, at the time. But it was no easy, that decision. But when Souness made up his mind on a player, that was it. And many of them came in. They were his signings, and they went back out just as quick when they didn't hit the mark. And I think over these players that contracts are up, I think he needs to be seen to be making a really cold decision on them to help him get through this period. Because Derek, make no mistake, I really like Michael Beale as a guy. I really like him as a coach, and I think he has all the makings of being an excellent Rangers manager. If he loses the next 2 Old Firm games, he is on a sugarly peg. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah.
Because then you go into the next season, and that first Old Firm game of the season is must win. We know anything can happen in Old Firm. You can have a player sent off after 1 minute. So it's a really, really, really delicate situation for Michael Beale. And listen, people might say, Johnny, you're talking nonsense, but I'll just say, look, I've been around the block enough to know Rangers managers that don't win against Celtic don't last too long. Now, I hope Michael Beale's not one of them, because I think he's as I say, I've said it already, I think he's a really, really talented manager. Yeah. But this next game, this semi-final, this will probably end up being the most important game of his entire tenure as Rangers manager. For me, there is absolutely no doubt about that.
He's got a major job on his hands getting these players up for that game. Absolutely. Sean McLean raises a point here. Johnny, how much would it take to get Duke? Pretty quiet afternoon from him. He has been the main man recently. I wouldn't be opposed to see him pitch up at Ibrox. I've got to say, he has been attracting attention from clubs down south. Good player for me, Johnny. I would like to see him. I'd like to see Rangers look at players like that in the division that could do a job, and he is certainly one of them. I think he's destined for better things than Aberdeen this summer.
You need to fill the squad with numbers, Derek. You absolutely have to. And look at this guy's numbers. 39 games for Aberdeen, 18 goals, 6 assists. So 24 goal contributions in 39 games. And that's playing in a much weaker Aberdeen team than Rangers. So I think he's been an outstanding signing by Aberdeen's recruitment team. They really, really deserve a lot of credit for that guy. Now, on what it would take to get him in, I think it would be significant, Derek. He is on a deal with the club that was signed via Benfica that allowed him to arrive for free, and it means that Aberdeen only get 50% of the transfer fee. So I think maybe looking for 3.5 million, something like that. I don't think it'll be an easy deal to get across the line at all. And I don't think Rangers would be that keen to kind of part with that kind of money for Duke. So I think it would be a very, very difficult deal to pull off. We know what the relationship is between Aberdeen and Rangers at the best of times. There's so much room for like naughtiness when it comes to sort of leaking little bits to the press and causing disruption to the deal. So I just can't see it happening. I see Robert Coates making a point, and I totally agree with him. There's a sort of snobbery towards players in the league. I'm not sure if it's at Rangers per se, but I think there's a sort of general snobbery. I think from fans of both Celtic and Rangers, for pundits, from writers, I just think at large in the Scottish game. And I grew up at a time when Rangers would go to other teams in Scotland and pick up their best players, and they became the heart and soul of Rangers teams of the past. You think of Ian Ferguson. Like, what would the Twitter reaction be now if Rangers went and signed St Mirren's best midfielder? But the Twitter reaction would be, he's not good enough. Well, that guy went on to become the most decorated player in the history of Rangers.
Even guys like Alec Cleland came in. Walter had an eye for a player, didn't he? Knew who could come in and do a job for him. Guys like that that would run through a brick wall for him. I think Rangers need to be looking at these sort of guys that can do the business. I mean, they are few and far between in the Scottish League. I think it's one of the poorest Premiership seasons of all time. I think this Rangers and Celtic are so far ahead. It's rich me saying that after Rangers get beat off Aberdeen today, but in the grand scheme of things, I think that they're so far ahead of the rest at the moment. But there are talents to be found to be found out there. That's for sure. I know somebody mentioned Lawrence Shanklin. Kevin Nisbet is another that a few supporters felt that Rangers should have been going for in January.
I'd take Shanklin. I've said this before. I've said it many times. If you're talking about a guy like Lawrence Shanklin, who's going to guarantee you 25 goals in Scottish football for Hearts, so what's he going to get you at Rangers? I would see him as coming in and being a Chris Boyd type. A guy that you're not necessarily going to play in every game, but who's going to play often enough that they're going to rack up goals. There's a lot of people who disagree with me on that. They don't think it's good enough. Just look at the numbers and compare them to the numbers of the Rangers strikers. He's scoring at what rate compared to Alfredo Morelos? So I know he takes penalties, and that changes the stats a little bit, but I think he's performing significantly better in these kind of numbers than Morelos, for example. So, and that's in a Hearts team. You ask yourself how Alfredo Morelos would do if he was in a Hearts team. I don't think he would do all that well. So, listen, all great Rangers teams have a core of Scottish lads. That's incredibly important because what it means to play for the club and what it means to the culture of Scotland, these are things that it's more difficult for the foreign lads to get ingrained in them. Now, we know that in the history of the club, people like Jorg Alberts, like Brian Laudrup, they came to understand all that. They came to be part of the fabric of the club. But they came to understand it, and it by osmosis went into them because they had the guys around them that were telling them that were not accepting anything less than the standards that they'd grown up with, being in and around the club. I think you need an element of that. And I saw someone else in the comments had said before that, the club missed a trick with Lewis Ferguson and Aaron Hickey. I think they're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. I mean, Pep Guardiola's after Aaron Hickey now. Lewis Ferguson's got Juventus after him and teams like that. And a lot of people around these guys were saying they're not good enough. No, you don't want them. Better to go after foreign guys. the thing is, like, you need a level of just guaranteed performance in the Scottish Premiership. I think sometimes over the last 4 or 5 years or whatever, the Gerrard era onwards, sometimes we just put too much store in European performance, Derek. And listen, I'm probably as guilty as anyone for it, is because you get carried away with the European nights and coming back as a European force, and being a slightly snobbery about Scottish football. You know, like European football is really where it's at. That's where the big nights are. That's where the romance is. That's where the top quality games are. You know, you've got a team that's coming at you. You're going back at them. It's not like Scottish football where they just camp in. But you know what? I think I speak for a lot of Rangers fans when I say I think people are now more focused on winning leagues and cups again. There's been one Scottish Cup and one league in the last 10 years. And you know what? It might be nice to go through a period where Rangers are not quite as good in Europe, but they're starting to win quite a lot domestically again. And then you can worry about Europe down the line a little bit, because Rangers haven't won as enough for a club their size. Absolutely no way. And maybe part of improving on that is ensuring the club have guys in the dressing room that know the league and know the club. I can't say I'm sitting here saying that there's many players in the Scottish Premiership that are just direct hits, Derek, that are just obvious. You have to go and snap them up. And some of these guys are quite difficult to get out. Hearts are not a club without any cash anymore. They're not a wee club you can just pick their best players off for nothing. You know, someone like Lawrence Shanklin actually might end up costing you so much money here as well, actually going in the foreign market, because to get that guarantee of quality, that guarantee of performance in the Scottish Premiership, it's going to cost you so much. You're actually better just taking a punt on someone who might also have a higher ceiling. So these are the complicating factors. But there's no doubt in my mind, no doubt whatsoever, and I'd love to hear your take on it. I think Rangers have made a hash of the Scottish market in the last 5 years. A hash of it.
Well,
Lewis Ferguson's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer in every way, conceivable way. Well,
with that as well, I mean, the midfield wasn't upgraded until January this year, so they've been crying out for a bit of rejuvenation in the midfield area for a number of years now. So it was a no-brainer for me as well, Johnny. By all accounts, he was never on the radar. He's went to Italy and he's doing smashing over there. And like you say, he's been eyed by some bigger fish. There's other players that went over there now. I know that the young Hibs left back, was it Doig, that went over there. He's doing well at Hellas Verona. He's another one, although again, Hibs, would they sell to Rangers what this at the price that they sold to Hellas Verona? I'm not entirely sure, but there is diamonds out there that Rangers need to cast their net in these Scottish waters, so to speak. And so another one, lots of comments coming about Kevin Van Veen. I know he scored against Celtic yesterday, and he has actually his numbers are really good for a team like Motherwell in the bottom six. I remember watching him playing for Scunthorpe, and he moved to Motherwell, and he certainly has hit the ground running there. I'm not entirely sure if he's good enough to play for Rangers and all that entails, but he's certainly one that you can't deny. He's done well at Motherwell. Johnny, he's another player that you should be taking attention of.
Outstanding, absolutely outstanding. But I would say there's a big jump going from Motherwell to Glasgow Rangers, and Kevin Van Veen's 31. So if you were to go and get him, he's got a year left in his contract. He's not going to get any better than he is right now.
Is he better than Čolak, do you think?
See, that's the thing. Is he better than Čolak? I don't know.
No.
He's not had a career that suggests he is. You know, Antonio Čolak, for his flaws, has played in Greece, has played in with Copenhagen and Denmark. He's played in Croatia and been successful in these leagues. And let's face it, for a long period, he was pretty successful in Scotland. But it's come off the rails quite spectacularly for him. I think the days of Rangers going out and splashing money on a 31-year-old, I don't think that's good business for the club, I've got to be honest. Yeah. So I would say that one's probably not a great shout, although I can understand why people are looking at his numbers and saying, look, this is a guy you just go and get in. Just a wee point, mate, I wanted to bring up from Hector here. He's saying many players has the team across the city signed from the Scottish market in the last 2 seasons. Yeah, and that's obviously true.
But yeah, it
Ange
just shows that there's
Postecoglou
bargains to be had. There's bargains to be had out there if you know a market. I mean, Ange knows the market over in Japan, obviously, and it's worked wonders for them.
Yeah, but I would also say what Ange Postecoglou has done is he's rejuvenated some of the Scottish players that were under Lennon were completely out of the picture. Celtic fans were going absolutely bonkers when Tony Ralston was given a new deal. Now, no one's questioning that now. He's one of the Scotland squad right back. You've got Greg Taylor, who I think has been one of the most impressive performers for them in the course of this season.
Yeah,
Callum McGregor's obviously doing really well and was doing well previously, but the previous two players that he's improved without actually going into the Scottish market. I get that he hasn't done that. That's going to be a big problem for Celtic, by the way. I was reading a piece the other day that was talking about their lack of homegrown players to fill their UEFA quota, and I think that's also an issue for Rangers, which is why they also need to keep an eye on what's happening in the Scottish market, or at least have a better pathway for their players coming through from the B team. But Derek, you're 100% spot on. Postecoglou knew that market and was able to go and surgically pull players out for next to nothing that have come and hit the ground running. But here's my one sort of shed of light, wee shard of light that's coming through on that topic. I think we know that Ange Postecoglou is being linked with a lot of clubs now. The latest one is Chelsea. It was in The Guardian, so it's not exactly a paper that's putting the staff under pressure to go and get stories.
Yeah.
Clearly that's come from somewhere pretty firmed up.
Yeah.
And I think that there is interest now in England across quite a lot of Premier League clubs. He's now a name that's on lists. I think when Ange Postecoglou leaves, and it's inevitable he will leave at some point, either in the summer or at the end of the following season, don't think his career suggests that he stays anywhere for that long. Then you've got another manager coming in who's got to use all these players that he's brought in from the J League that they maybe don't have the same level of understanding of the culture of the football, and maybe want to play a completely different style. And it's one thing coming at a club where the team is dominated by native players. I think Celtic have nearly as many Japanese players now as they have Scots. It can't be far off it. And that's going to be a very delicate cultural balance for any manager that comes in after Postecoglou.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I might be I might be reading too much into the future, because Postecoglou could stay there for another 3 years for all we know.
Yeah.
But I suspect that signing so many players from one market probably isn't a good idea long term.
Yeah. And as much as that NM says, so our strategy is to hope the Celtic manager leaves. Absolutely not. Rangers need to get their own house in order in the summer, and that is a huge squad overhaul. Players are going to leave, and I think it's going to require more than 4 or 5 players that have been mooted in previous weeks. Rangers need strengthening all over the pitch. They need a spine. I actually spoke to Tommy Cowan, who played for Rangers back in the day, and he says that they need a spine of the team, need a backbone there, and it's hard to disagree after watching that today. From back to front, there is improvement required all over the pitch. So yeah, work for Michael Beale and the coaching staff to do this week. Huge game on Sunday. Rangers need a result, Johnny. It's hard to describe how big this game is. Of course, if you win it as well, you stop Celtic doing the treble, which is big in itself. But Rangers need to retain this Scottish Cup. But after that showing today, you can understand why supporters aren't very confident heading into that game. I've got no idea how it's going to go, but he needs a reaction from this group of players. I just worry that will he get it? I know he was asked on BBC if he's concerned about next week heading into that after what he witnessed today. He says it'll be a completely different game, different style of game as well. So he doesn't think there'll be anything of a hangover heading into that game. But Celtic have Rangers' number. That is without question at the moment. Of course, Rangers won the Scottish Cup semi-final last season under Gio, and that sort of helped them go on and obviously reach that European final and obviously win that Scottish Cup after so long. But this Rangers side in its current form, it's hard to pick out any positives or any shimmers of light, Johnny, to latch onto that they're going to get a result next week.
No, you're right, Derek.
I'm the doom-monger here, but
obviously not great. It's not great for the Rangers review that we're having to talk about all this negativity. We'd rather be talking about positively. Last season was unsuccessful in terms of the league campaign, but we had so many great moments. You flying out all over Europe to visit these wonderful cities as part of the Europa League campaign, and it was a lot more pleasant last year than it has been this year. Put it that way. I think Beale is going to have to go and just calmly assess what they can do to kind of try something a bit different against Celtic. Now, the argument, and it's a rational one, that you could throw back at me if Michael Beale was sitting here would probably be something along the lines of, well, we drew 2-2 with Celtic and we should have won. We got a bit spanked because we weren't on it at all in the cup final, and I take responsibility for that. The players didn't perform that day. But at Parkhead, we should have got at least a draw. We were denied by bad refereeing decision, etc., etc. So these games have been close and fine margins, and the fine margin can come our way. We'll just stick with doing exactly what we've done so far. I just kind of feel the mood music's changed a little bit, Derek.
Yep.
That's my reading of the situation. Now, that might be totally wrong, but I just think this defeat today and just the general tenor after that game, that's such an important cup final. I feel like it's changed a little bit, the mood music, and I think that's going to mean Celtic are going to have a little bit extra and Rangers are going to have a little bit less. It's not something I can sit here and say I've got X, Y, and Z thoughts about how Rangers can go into this one and get the result. And I'm going to sound like Scrooge here and extremely pessimistic, but I suppose many people will be feeling the same based on that performance today. If you can't beat Aberdeen, it's going to be a real struggle to beat Celtic because Celtic are significantly better.
Yeah,
it's a big week. It's as I said, Derek, I don't think this is hyperbole. It's going to be the biggest week of Michael Beale's managerial career at Rangers, because if he doesn't get through this, then there's going to be so much pressure on the start of next season. And the minute something goes wrong, then the wheels come off. We saw that with Giovanni Van Bronckhorst to a certain extent, and Gio had a lot of positivity in the bank. I think Gio starting this season had more positivity in the bank for getting to the Europa League final than Beale has at the moment. So if the outlook is bleak, it's up to him to turn it around. True Rangers men are forged in times of adversity, Derek, and this is a time of adversity. He's got a very difficult job. He's got another man's squad. He's got a lot of players leaving at the end of the season that he's got to try and get a turn out of.
Yeah, good luck.
I don't envy him.
Yeah, listen, it's a big week for Rangers. Of course, a week can be a long time in football, but the build-up now begins to that Sunday semi-final against Celtic. A sobering afternoon today as Rangers were defeated by 2-0 at Pittodrie against Aberdeen. Much improved performance is required next week. We'll have all the build-up, folks, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Myself and Joshua will be back, I'm sure, as we look back in more detail at where it went wrong for Rangers yesterday. But we hope you can join us for all the daily videos in the lead up to that game on Sunday. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, then if you do that, if you hit the notification bell, you'll never miss a video when we go live. And if you want to take advantage of the website as well, we've got that cracking offer on just now, just 50 pence for 2 months worth of content. There's a ticker up on the screen just now. You also get entered. You can enter a draw for a personalised tour of Ibrox with a club legend as well. So now is the time to sign up, folks. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe to do so. Big thanks to Jonny and to everyone for interacting with the show this evening. Difficult one to record, but we do it all the same, and we'll be back, as I mentioned, tomorrow morning to speak to you all again then. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Bye for now.